Welcome to Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, episode 183. We are today talking about a topic that I wish was not so prominent, but it is, and that is the ongoing, this is not even exaggeration, the drug problems of our country and our addiction problems are unbelievable. And with this open border standing there wide open with no vetting, the problem just gets worse. But we are thankful for ministries like the Foundry, and we got Micah Andrews here with us today on this edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, CEO of the Foundry and Foundry Ministries, and we'll certainly give you their website throughout this, but it's foundryministries.com. So Micah, you have you were a student pastor for 13 years before joining the team at the Foundry. You started, like a lot of people in ministry, as a volunteer and coordinating volunteers. You worked with the men's program mainly, and then, of course, recently were made you were made the CEO. You heard me say it. We wish that this organization and this ministry wasn't needed, but not only is it needed, it's desperate. The situation right now with addiction in our country is just mind-boggling.
It is. I think the numbers say 22 million Americans are suffering from addiction. 110,000 overdosed from opioid overdoses last year and died. That fills up Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Yeah,
and when you look at it from that perspective, 150 people a day are dying in our country from overdoses to drug abuse.
Well, and do you remember? I remember when it was something that you heard about a family, and they had this family member, and I guess you've heard about her or him, with drug addiction. Unfortunately, my mother talks about being a child and having a mom that struggled with prescription drugs and addiction. But in those days, it was rarely heard of, and now I can't remember. And I'm not exaggerating, I can't remember the last time that I sat down to talk to anyone that did not have drug addiction somewhere in their circle, whether with friends, usually with family. Mm-hmm. And why do you think that is?
Well, I think one thing, it kind of goes back to the very beginning, that broken people have broken problems, right? Broken issues.
Right.
And so I think we're all trying to figure out how to solve those. And if we look in the wrong direction, I think substances are so readily available today. I think the pharmaceutical companies have flooded the market. The illegal market has gone rampant. And I think ease of use or ease of access, probably. I asked a guy probably 10 years ago how easy it was to find drugs in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And he said, I can find marijuana anytime, anywhere, whatever. You fast forward to about maybe a year and a half ago, I asked a similar question to another guy, and he said, I can find heroin and buy heroin cheaper today than I can buy or find marijuana. So when you talk about the market, so to speak, being flooded, I think that's one of the biggest issues, because we're all trying to find that place of peace. I think that kind of goes back to the humanity issue, right? And when we're trying to find a solution to the life's problems, if we look in the wrong direction, ease of access is creating that problem.
Micah, let me ask you this. How many of the folks you see involved in this come from a situation where they may have, you mentioned the pharmaceutical companies, may have started on painkiller for a surgery or a procedure or something, and that migrated over into drug abuse at some point?
Unfortunately, Bubba, that's very common. I think the folks that we serve at the Foundry are kind of like when I was in youth ministry, serving 6th graders through 12th graders. It come from all varieties, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that is definitely one of the inroads to addiction. We serve a lot of people with generational addiction, right? I used with my parents, who used to some form or fashion with their parents. And so you've got the generational aspect of it. But I never met anybody that woke up and said, I want to be a drug addict for the rest of my life. And so typically, whether the path in may be varied, it's like a ditch that you can't get out of. So folks that are struggling with prescription addiction is definitely one of the big pieces that we see at the Foundry.
I'm thinking about things that I've seen firsthand, and I do think that, when there's sometimes we see about drugs and we're kind of like appalled, like, why in the world would anybody ever try that? And we'll talk about fentanyl coming up here in a minute. But
yeah, it's a whole nother.
But I want to talk about this. I actually understand. I'm not condoning it, and it's very dangerous. I do understand somebody saying, I am in severe pain, and I take this, and I'm not.
Right.
And that gives me a quality of life that I thought was gone forever. Now they don't understand in the beginning that, but this is going to kill you if you become dependent on this, and it's going to ruin your life. But that first day that you said, I'm hurting, now I'm not. See, that world of opioids, I kind of understand the draw to that. And I remember even getting something that you think is harder to understand, things like meth. Mm-hmm. I remember talking to a person that I was trying to help that was family. And I said, why in the world would you ever try this? And the family member said, the first time that I took this, I felt the way that I've always desired to feel. I thought in that moment, if I could feel like this all the time, my life would be better. This is the way I want to feel. Now, you hit the point. There is a way to have that peace and to have that joy that, transcends all understanding. And we know what that answer is, which is why I'm glad there's organizations like you that are trying to point them to something better. And that, of course, is redemption. But if you don't know that and you've never experienced that, and somebody says, try this, because they always think, don't they, Micah, well, I won't get addicted to it.
Right.
This is just a moment that I'm going to try something. And some of these drugs are so highly addictive, heroin being one that you mentioned.
Sure.
That first try is all it takes because it's got you, because of what she just said. She said, it made me feel the way I've always desired to feel.
A lot of the guys that we serve refer to it as chasing the dragon.
That's right. Yeah.
They're always trying to get back to that feeling that they first experienced. And you mentioned it, Rick. The drug itself is not. If I have knee surgery, I'm gonna need some pain medication.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But those feelings that you get is chasing that feeling,
Right.
and that pseudo peace that comes from that
Manufactured piece.
Yeah. And so when you start using substances to kind of fill a hole that they're not designed to fill, that's when addiction really starts to settle in. Because we cope with our emotions, with loss, with grief, with substances that weren't intended to fix those things or to fill those voids. And so I think that's the one of the biggest challenges that we face in recovery is getting back to, all right, because we can dry anybody out if you stay long enough with us, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But let's get back to kind of the root issue here, whether it was an injury and you slipped into, and I don't know that that's the right terminology, but if
we know what you mean.
That was kind of the entry route, right?
Yeah.
Or whether it's some childhood trauma that you've never dealt with or worked through, and you're just trying to find a numbing agent, so to speak.
Yeah.
So a lot of it would be like almost trying to fill potholes on the interstate with sand.
Great description.
It's just not going to last, is it?
Absolutely.
Great description.
Yeah. I remember this to the point you were talking about. So we've all been through difficult things. And by the way, in case you are wondering out there, in this life, you're not going to make it without difficulty.
No.
You can't avoid it. It's part of life. And you better learn how to cope with it and develop coping skills that are healthy, are looking for the answers in the right places, back to the sand analogy, which was absolutely spot on. But I remember when we were experiencing the earthly death of our son, one of our sons, and I remember people of the best of intentions, tried to get my wife to take drugs. I mean, drugs that are designed for to help.
Medications.
And she said, absolutely not. And she said, the reason why is I don't want to be numbed. I want to feel this pain. I want to be refined by this pain. And while I'm going through it, I want to be completely clear-headed because I want to see God in this. I want to learn from that, and don't you take that away from me. I'm not going to numb myself to try to get through this. I want every single benefit from this kind of trauma that is going to push me closer to God and is going to make me stronger. It's going to make me more dependent on Him. It's going to refine me, and you're trying to give me drugs to rob me of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't need to be numbed.
And that's right.
You know?
And I think that's one of the things at the Foundry that we try to really work through.
Right.
Let's get back so that you can experience emotion in the right way.
In the right way.
So that you can experience brokenness and broken relationships, because we all have them.
Right.
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 But let's sort through those and work through those to where how you respond down the road is very different than how you responded prior to this change of heart or change of life that you're experiencing at the places like the Foundry.
Yeah, we'll come back. We want to jump into more of that too, and even some things that are going on around the world, things that are happening right now involving drugs that are just destroying the very fabric of every country that they come into. When Rick and Bubba University, the podcast continues.
This is the Rick and Bubba Show. Watch more at blazetv.com/Rick and Bubba.
Rick and Bubba, Rick and Bubba.
All right, so let's talk about life insurance. It's not something that is fun. It's not a great topic. None of us really want to talk about it. But let's just look at it from another angle. We're talking about you got to learn to look at things from a different angle. Don't you feel, and I do, and I know you do too, Bubba, a responsibility to those that depend on you?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and so, death is something that we all have to face. We don't have to live our life in terror of it, but you need to be prepared, because if you were to leave this world before, your spouse or your children, we have a responsibility to make sure they're taken care of. Now let's get to all right, you got me on that, but wow, this is complicated. I don't want some policy that, they try to get me to build a college fund in it or build my retirement in it. I just want to know that when I die, that this is what my loved ones get. Well, us too. That's term life insurance. And you can get it very easily from Ladder, Ladder. It's 100% digital. Now, listen to this. If you are wanting to have coverage of $3 million or less, then you're not going to have to see a doctor. There's going to be no needles, no paperwork. You can apply for $3 million in coverage or less in just a few questions and about your health in their application. They're rated on Trustpilot 4.8 out of 5 stars. Forbes magazine had them as best life insurance on their best insurance list. Ladder's customers realize that if you just have a few minutes, a phone, a laptop, that's all you need. Ladder's smart algorithms work in real time, and you'll find out if you're instantly approved. There won't be any hidden fees. You can cancel anytime you want to. Get a full refund if you change your mind in the first 30 days. Okay? So why don't you look now? Ladder policies are issued by insurers with long proven histories of paying claims, rated A and A+, out there on by AM Best. So why don't you go to ladderlife.com/RickBubba, and we'll find out if you're instantly approved. Okay? And you can get this off your list. That's LADDER life.com/RickBubba, ladderlife.com/RickBubba. Back on Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, we're talking to Micah Andrews, CEO of the Foundry, foundryministries.com to find out more. We were talking about it even on the live show, the big show today, and that is fentanyl. I know that Xi is here from China. We got problems at the border. Fentanyl. You've been around doing this kind of work for a while, Micah. Have you seen anything quite like this?
Nothing at all quite like this. We kind of started seeing fentanyl about 2 years ago, really coming out of the pandemic, as it started surfacing in recovery circles and in recovery industry, if you will. And about a year ago is when we started seeing folks coming to the Foundry that fentanyl was their primary drug of choice. And so what we have seen is just this rampant uptick in usage from folks that, again, are just trying to get a little bit more out of their substance of choice. Mm-hmm. The risk that we have really experienced is where, whether you call it laced or mixed with pressed prescription pills, folks that are not really interested in using fentanyl, but that their drug of choice is something else that is now mixed and pressed with or stamped is, I think, the terminology. And so when I think I'm taking Adderall, I'm actually taking Adderall and fentanyl mixed.
Right.
And so what happens is you create another layer of addiction because I want the way that felt as opposed to the way it used to feel. And so folks are almost unintentionally finding themselves addicted to fentanyl.
So does the drug dealer do that? So they'll come back and go, now, wow, what was that I got? He goes, well, I'll tell you what that was. I put a little extra in there for you. You want some more of that? Is that how they operate?
Yeah, well, you got to think from the industry.
Right, yeah.
The guy that's got the best stuff is going to have the best product, is going to have the largest client base.
Right.
And so it's that business model really that happens.
So, Micah, and I'm not familiar with it, but we hear how dangerous fentanyl is. We know someone who's lost family members to it. We've seen the training videos where a police officer passes out just by inhaling it.
Right.
How can you use that and it not just kill you immediately? I mean, is there different levels, I guess?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it has to do with an individual's tolerance level. I mean, there are multiple things. The amount that is actually put into, that is ingested,
Right.
Has an effect differently on different people. The ability to process drugs within our systems has an effect.
But it definitely can be deadly, right?
Oh, absolutely can be deadly. In fact, first responders in just in our city are now double gloving if they anticipate an overdose scenario. They're having a double glove and sometimes triple glove because of the environment.
Wow.
And so it is unbelievably lethal. But again, it's chasing something, really, right?
Yeah.
What it really all gets back to.
Is it moving meth out a little bit as the preferred drug? Because I know for one time it was meth everywhere. I mean,
Right.
it was and all the horrible things that go with that. But you're hearing more about fentanyl now than you are meth.
Yeah.
Am I imagining that?
No, you're not. Not at all, Rick. 16 years ago when I got to the Foundry, your cocaines and your stimulants and methamphetamines were kind of the primary drugs of choice that we were seeing. There was a dip in that and an increase in opioid use early on, shortly thereafter. But literally in the last 2 years, fentanyl has taken the lead role there because it's unbelievably inexpensive to manufacture.
Oh, okay.
Right? And so and then again, you think about how little it takes to actually change the dynamic of a high.
Yeah.
And so your volume is controlled completely different than anything else.
Let me ask you, you mentioned Adderall a minute ago. Common prescription for kids nowadays that have attention deficit disorder. As parents, we've all been told that that's not addictive when they give it to the kid.
Yeah.
Is that not the case?
Well, I can't speak from the medical perspective, but I can tell you that we have seen numerous individuals year after year that Adderall was either their drug of choice or kind of their introduction to something further.
Is it, if it's not chemically addictive, could it be operationally addictive?
Yeah, for sure. I think,
and I'm not, that's probably not the right term, but what
behaviorally,
I mean, that you just need it to do what you want to do.
Right. That normal feels different now.
Right.
And so in order to feel normal, I'm trying to do anything or take anything that I can that would help me feel
to get back to that spot.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've known that people who are drug addicts and have gone into rehab, and of course everything is removed. Right. And one of the things that they begged for, I got to have my Adderall.
Right.
You can't take that from me.
Right.
Because I can't function without it. Now I don't know what we want to call that, but that sounds,
even though it's not a chemical addiction, it's what I call an operational addiction.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so with this open border that we have, and you said you're seeing the fentanyl being more and more prominent, and the heroin being more and more prominent. Just common sense, and Bob and I have talked about it on the main show many times. If you have an open border and people aren't being vetted coming into the country, everything comes in so much easier. Are you seeing a direct result from that to your clients you're dealing with?
Yeah, without question. You know, the DEA agents that we have worked with at the Foundry have identified that I-20 corridor is a hot spot coming all the way from the border all the way through to Atlanta. And so we're kind of, if you look at the Foundry's primary campus in Bessemer, we're 6 blocks from I-20, right? So the access corridor, but then you start talking, think about this. What happens if you close the door? at the border. It's going to have a positive effect.
Right.
And so by the other option, we've got the doors wide open. It's not being stopped, and it's trickling down not just to your drug users that have this stereotypical I've lived on the streets kind of drug. I'm talking about people that you're going to school with, people you're going to church with, people that you work with, that are now being introduced to fentanyl, many of which, unbeknownst to them, that is creating the epidemic that we're facing.
No, I think you're right. I think as far as, when you think about, like you just said, stereotypes, that's always been around. To me, and maybe I'm just because where I interact, but it seems like the huge increase is with the people you wouldn't expect to have drug problems.
For sure.
I'm talking as far as stereotypes are concerned.
I get it.
None of us know everybody's issues in their life.
Right.
But by all appearances, this is not some person on the streets.
Yeah, not living under a bridge somewhere.
Yeah. These are people that have jobs. They end up losing them. It ends up destroying their lives, but they would be in a part of our society that we would have thought would have been exempt from this.
Yeah, and I'll tell you how severe it has gotten with fentanyl in our country, and I don't have to tell you, but about maybe 3 weeks ago, the Wall Street Journal actually did an article that was featuring some of the cartel in Mexico that were notifying their manufacturers of fentanyl to say, stop it. And it was twofold reason. One was because the heat from the United States has been turned up on us in our country. We want to turn that heat down. But also, you're killing all of our clients, right? So they're saying, stop it or we'll take you out of the equation. Again, the Wall Street Journal reporting this about what's happening with the cartels in Mexico.
Yeah.
A
dead clientele.
They need addicted, not dead.
Yeah,
right.
That's the end of the muddy line.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, and I don't think any of us have even the remote concept of how much money we're talking about.
Oh, I'm really close.
The dollars. I mean, it is huge, huge business. Which is why there's such a draw to it. What do we hear in Smuggler's Blues by Glenn Fry?
The lure of easy money. Bring good men to their knees.
It has a very strong appeal, doesn't it?
It does.
All right, we'll come back. I want to ask you about the process because, we've all seen it, and we'll break and we'll come back, is give us some guidance if we have somebody that we love, or there's somebody that's watching this, listening to this, because one of the things that you see is this cycle of the addict that goes, like you said, you can dry out anybody if you just work the program. It's kind of like what I said when people ask me about diets. They all work, but are they sustainable?
Right.
And so drug rehabilitation that is sustainable, because we've all heard the horror stories of the loved one that just keeps going back and going back and going back. And we'll talk about that vicious cycle when we come back, when Rick and Bubba University continues right after this. All right, so Bubba, another problem we talk about on the show, and that is I need something, but I don't like sending my money to people and companies that I think are what's wrong with our society.
You just feel you're supporting the political causes that you don't want to, but you still need the service.
Well, I have good news when it comes to wireless. 10 years now, Patriot Mobile has been America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. And now, when we say only, trust us, the only. We love that they support what we do here at Rick and Bubba University and Rick and Bubba Show. So we love partnering with them. They offer dependable nationwide coverage, giving you the ability to access all the three major networks. You're not going to have a downgrade in service, which means you get the same coverage that you've been accustomed to, but guess what's not going to be there? Funding, things that you don't agree with.
Thank you.
That's out. When you switch to Patriot Mobile, you're sending the message, what? Free speech, religious freedom, sanctity of life, Second Amendment. You're supporting military veterans and first responders and treating them as the heroes that they are. So their 100% U.S.-based customer service team makes switching easy. Do you want to keep the number? Fine. Keep your number. You don't have to switch numbers. Keep your phone? That's fine. Or you can upgrade, whatever you want to do. The team there will help you find the best plan for your needs. So go to patriotmobile.com/RickBubba. That's patriotmobile.com/RickBubba, or you can call them 972-PATRIOT. Get free activation when you use the offer code RickBubba. That's free activation. Join the team today at Patriot Mobile. So we're on Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. Micah Andrews, CEO of the Foundry, talking about drug addiction, but then talking about the hope and rehabilitation with the right system. And so that's kind of what we talked about going into the break, Micah. You know this. I don't have to tell you this. This is what you do. This is your everyday. I can't tell you the number of times. I think one time I read a book from a person who had a drug addiction in their home, and they didn't have access to the Foundry, or they didn't know about it. It was another part of the country. And he said that he listed that their loved one had been in and out of rehab 23 times.
Yeah.
23 times.
Wow.
And he talked about the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they spent, and they never could get that person. I know some of it, you can't make people make good choices. I got that.
Sure.
So I acknowledge that. But tell me about your experience on, and I know that I'm not trying to tell you to do a one-size-fits-all, because people are so unique in their individuality. But what have you seen based on what the Foundry does to try to at least minimize the probability of the returning and the returning and the returning?
Yeah. So if I had to describe the Foundry and how we do what we do, I'd take it straight back to the book of Luke, the story of the Good Samaritan.
Right.
We try to come alongside men and women that are in the ditch of addiction, pull them out of that ditch, first of all, right? Then mend their wounds and prepare them for life in the future. I think one of the things that makes the Foundry's model unique is kind of that answer to what do you tell the parents, right? That we created a culture of loving first and loving most, right? Because most of the folks that come to us are hopeless. They're in a trap. If they could have gotten out on their own, they probably would have already, but they can't. And so they come to a place like the Foundry to where they're going to first and foremost find that love and acceptance, right? Whether you're going to hear about Jesus, but you're going to feel him before you hear about him at the Foundry. That's kind of the way we have this thing called the first day experience. If you've ever checked into a nice hotel, when you walk into that room and you see on the television, "Welcome, Micah, glad you're here."
Right.
We created that same environment. So when someone walks in our doors, they're going to see their name on a welcome sheet at the front desk, right? They're not going to carry their bags to their room once they've checked in. And we're just trying to create that environment and that atmosphere to show someone who has been kicked out, thrown away by everybody in their life, that somebody else cares about you. And I think that is the key piece for folks. It's the key first starting piece, that my life still matters.
Yeah.
Right? That I'm not what I think I've been told I am, but I still got some hope. I still got some future. And that's a critical piece of the way we kind of approach it, is to say, look, I don't care what the past part of the story looks like. Let's focus on what today and the future can look like.
Micah, tell us a little bit, kind of the nuts and bolts of how do you replace? We used that pothole example a minute ago. That hole in somebody's life with a spiritual answer that we all believe is the answer. But how do you go about that? How do you build those people up to do that so that they don't have the desire for this anymore? Yeah.
Well, like Rick said, if there was a one-size-fits-all, it would be ideal.
Right.
However, there's not. Different people get into addiction, different routes. I think they walk away from addiction or are delivered, or whatever, how you want to describe that or define that, in different ways. Our approach at the Foundry is what we created, a process. We call it the Foundry Way, right? Mm-hmm. And it's this idea of you're going to be residentially with us for 26 weeks. And so we do a split, 13 weeks of what we would call Give Week, 13 weeks of Grow Week, and they alternate back and forth. And so our approach is really kind of simple, that we're going to be helping you walk through all the things to fill in that hole. How to deal with conflict in a positive way. How to sustain relationships in the right way. All of these different pieces. And then the following week, when you're giving, you're going to have what we call a real live learning lab scenario, to where you can take what you've learned and put into practice. Quick example, if we're talking about anger management, somebody next week, when you're in this classroom, we're giving you all the tools and all the resources. We're trying to pack the bag so that when you get to the destination, you've got everything you need for an enjoyable trip, right?
Right.
So the next week, when you're taking those things of anger management and how to deal with it you're going to have somebody that's going to irritate you that following week. I can just about guarantee it.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we
bet on
create,
that.
whether it's in food services or in our thrift stores or in our maintenance staff, these guys are finding places to plug in so that they can actually put into practice what they've been taught the week before. And we found that to be very successful because it's a little bit of practice before you get back out in the real world and have to start playing again.
Yeah.
And so it's rethinking. It's Romans 12 that I would be restored by the renewing of my mind, that I would just think differently about myself and about the world that I live in and the people that I live with.
Yeah, that transformation. And I think sometimes we doubt that, even as followers of Christ, which I'm embarrassed to say that. I remember the first time I read Dallas Willard's book, The Spirit of the Disciplines. He said, I think the Western church has taken the power of the gospel and just sold it too low.
Yeah.
As if, hey, good, you're not going to hell, but it's really not going to change anything about your life. And he goes, that's not what Scripture teaches. I mean, like you said, I thought about in 1 or 2 Corinthians, I can't think which one it is, that it's chapter 5, verse 10, where it says that when you have been justified by Jesus, the old is passing away, and behold, the new has come. It doesn't say it might be somewhat new or it may be a little bit better. It says that old life, because of the power of Jesus, if you'll continue to seek him and be sanctified, abide in him, let him be what is the center of all your attention and what you seek after and what you pursue. And because he's so powerful, this old you will be completely regenerated and go away, and behold, the new has come. Not that the sort of new, completely new comes because of him, not because of us, not because of our new self-control and all this, but because of him. And I think sometimes, Rick Burgess included, reading that in Scripture and going, you mean it's just a one-step rope?
Right.
It's just immersing myself in Jesus.
Yeah.
And especially men, we're kind of like, well, there's got to be more to it than that, and you realize, no, he's the only hope you got.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think even what you guys do a good job of preparing them for, and I was not prepared for it to begin with when I was redeemed, but then I learned it as I went, is before we're redeemed, the flesh is running the show. The spirit's dead because of the original sin. Our spirit's dead. We don't have God's presence in our life. So then when you finally say, I repent and I turn from my sin, and now my spirit, God's seed, comes into my spirit and makes that dead spirit alive. And C.S. Lewis talks about this. Mm-hmm. He said, what you need to prepare for now is the flesh is going to fight for its life.
Right.
Because now it actually has an opponent now. And you better feed that spirit. Because you keep feeding that flesh, whoever you feed's going to win.
Yeah.
And so, but trying to get people to have that mindset, I know is not easy. And some of it's just supernatural. You can't do it. You ever had somebody say, look, I don't know how to explain it to you. I'm just telling you what happened. Right? Kind of like the guy when he's being questioned by the Pharisees. So tell me about, look, all I know is I was blind.
Yeah.
And this guy came over talking to me, and now I can see. That's all I know. But it's hard to get someone to understand that when you can't really tell them what it's going to be like.
That's right. And I'll tell you, one of the things I think also makes the Foundry unique is when someone's just coming into our program and their interaction with somebody that's about 5 or 6 months along in the process, when they start seeing a real life change in them, I don't have to say a word, right? Our staff doesn't have that influence. Who has the influence? Somebody that's been there, right there where they're at, and they see a life change. I love it when you got guys that come in or ladies that come in and they knew somebody from out on the streets, so to speak, that's 4 or 5 months ahead of them, and they're like, I don't even recognize that person anymore. There's a life change that takes place, and it's not a quick process.
No,
right?
No. And we shouldn't think it is. That's a mistake.
Yeah, I think it begins with a decision, but it doesn't end with a decision. Right. That decision just kind of changes the course and changes the direction. Sure. And then you gotta equip yourself with the right tools, the right resources, the right environments. And I think that's one of the things that the Foundry really keys in on is how do we set you up for a lifetime of freedom once you leave. I use that phrase all the time. You're going to play like you practice.
Right.
So let's practice really, really well.
Yeah. We'll come back. We'll finish up our conversation with Micah Andrews. A few more questions, and we'll tell you, how you can access and even help with what the Foundry is doing. When Rick and Bubba University, the podcast continues. Well, now this is an interesting opportunity. We're now going to talk about a new product called Fume, and guess what they do? They try to help you break bad habits.
Well, timing is perfect.
Well, and I think we would all agree with this. I know that we all are big fans of cold turkey. It's good. It's good after Thanksgiving on a sandwich, but sometimes trying to break an addiction, it's not that simple. And so you can break those bad habits by usually replacing that bad habit with a good habit. And the folks at Fume want to help you with that, because when you're thinking about, something that maybe you're enjoying, what if we could make that where it wouldn't be something bad for you? Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. And instead of those harmful chemicals, they use all natural, delicious flavors. So you get it. Instead of it being bad, Fume can actually be a good habit. And it makes replacing that bad habit a lot easier. It's got an adjustable airflow dial. It's designed with movable parts and magnets. If you're like me, I like to fidget. It's great for fidgeting. You'll love that. And your fingers have a lot to do for distressing and anxiety while breaking that bad habit. You'll love the taste. You'll love how weighted and perfectly balanced and extremely fun the product is. It's made of beautiful real wood, and you'll feel kind of cool with it as well. So if you'd like to find out more about it, now Fume is spelled F-U-M. Okay, tryfume.com. Use the code RickBubba to save 10%. When you get the Journey Pack today. That's tryfume.com, and use our code RickBubba to save that additional 10% off your order today. Head to tryfume.com/RickBubba for an additional 10% off. So Rick and Bubba University, and we're moving into the last part of our time together with Micah Andrews with the Foundry. So I'll ask you one more question, and then we'll get into maybe how people can come alongside what you guys are doing. Yeah. And if Bubba has
how
another
do
question.
You do all this?
Yeah. So when someone's leaving, I know someone who lived a rough life myself. I knew that I needed to change my environment when I decided to change my life, and I had to say goodbye to a lot of people. But sometimes those people don't want to be said goodbye to, and I know for my people that I know that were addicts, as soon as they go back out into society, those people start trying to find them again because they were good clients and they made money off of them. And what do you do to try to help them? Do you say you got to get rid of that cell phone, start over? I mean, what do you do with some of that practical stuff, like don't let the people come back into your life that were the problem? I mean, you're the problem, and we have to take ownership. It goes back to what our friend that was the addict, Bill Searcy, once said. He said, everybody kept telling me to move somewhere else, and he goes, the problem is everywhere I went, there I was. But so I know ultimately you got to be responsible for you, but there's also some things that you can't control, and that's one of them is like some of those people from your old life, they want to find you as soon as you get out.
Yeah. So I use a phrase that it was not original, but success is found when you change your playmates, your play toys, and your playground. Right. Changing a true change in identity becomes being somebody different. Right. Being somebody different somewhere else. Right. And so, like you mentioned, Rick, troubles abound. They will always be with us. Yeah. However, I can make it a little bit more difficult by closing some of the doors that I know are risk doors or trouble areas for my life. And so I think changing your environment is critical. That's why a lot of people that come to the Foundry, 17% of our folks currently are from a different state. Yeah. And they come to us. Why? Because they needed a change of venue. Right. And I think there's a reason. There's power in a fresh start and a clean slate. And starting completely fresh and starting completely over. If it were up to willpower, everybody would be clean. Everybody
right? Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I went through something recently, wasn't anything to do with addiction, but it was difficulty. And my friends meant well, and they're all standing there looking at me, and they said, look, man, anything you need, you let us know. And you know what I said? I don't know what I need. Yeah. I've never been in this situation before. I have no idea what I need. Yep. Some of this we're going to have to figure out as we go. If I knew what I needed, I'd already told you.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
So you also have to find out what you need.
So, Micah, you guys are doing an incredible job. You're getting incredible results, but it takes money to do this.
Yeah.
Tell us
And
now
people.
how, business-wise, how you keep this operation moving forward.
Yeah, I think it was our friend Scott Dawson has said many times, what we don't do for money, but it requires money.
Yes,
Amen.
yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
And so our model at the Foundry is we generate about 65% of our own revenue each year through our thrift stores, which kind of takes the pressure off in one sense, but then it also says, all right, how are we going to make up that difference?
Right.
And so we do a lot of fundraising, and we're always, I feel like we're stewarding well the gifts that people invest into our ministry.
Right.
But between our thrift stores, our fundraising efforts, we're generating somewhere, it's a significant amount of money required to do what we do.
Oh, sure. So what about if I'm out? I'm catching this podcast. So I know that we can help financially. I can just donate, right? I can just say, hey, let me help you.
Yeah, if the Lord has laid it on your heart, how do we do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think those one-time gifts are critical to our success. We have monthly giving campaigns and opportunities that we have through our website. But the greatest, I think, benefit that the Foundry and the men and women that we serve get is when someone gives themselves and gives their time.
Right.
I'll give you a great example of volunteering opportunities. I tell people often your presence is way more important than your performance. What you do, yeah, we're very grateful for that. It saves us money, helps us in so many different ways. But your presence, because if I'm teaching and trying to help walk through the life with a young guy who wants to be a father that he knows he hasn't been, who better than put him with than somebody that is a successful, faith-filled father that's volunteering their time.
Right.
And so for us, that's probably the greatest benefit that people can offer to our ministry.
Well, like what kind of skills do you need, or what kind of? I mean, you give an example of a dad, but are there particular things that you really need?
There are, and really, Bubba, it runs the gamut. There are things that are skill-based. There are some things we just need you around to kind of help fill some voids, fill some gaps. We do all of our volunteer opportunities through an app called VOMO, VOMO. We list all of our opportunities there, but they're not limited to those opportunities, because if somebody has a skill set or a gift that they can bring to the table. In fact, we've got a marriage and family counselor that has just started as a volunteer that supplements the faith counseling that we're offering and the substance use counseling that we're offering. We wouldn't be able to go out and afford to hire a full-time marriage and family counselor, but this individual is volunteering her time to our program participants. So that's invaluable for us.
A couple of things I want to hit on before we wrap up our time. So if you want to find out about serving, foundryministries.com/serve. So you can go right there and it'll go right to the part of the serving opportunities that are there. And also, I will say this just from experience. I know, Bubba, you've probably been in the same boat. We love the one-time gifts, but boy, if you could be a monthly giver.
Absolutely.
I've actually talked to ministries before, and I said, what's the best for you? And they said, honestly, I love the one-time gift. It looks good, but if you would do less than that but just do it every month, that really helps us because we can count on it. We know it's
That's
there.
it.
Right.
They
don't have to start at zero.
Right. Yeah. So even if it's a smaller amount, but you could do it month after month after month after month, that actually over the long term is the most beneficial.
Yeah.
And now we'll still take a one-time gift.
Absolutely.
Especially if it's a big one.
There's a reason we're called nonprofit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So if you want to serve, go there, and if you want to learn how you can come alongside this life-changing program, FoundryMinistries.com. If you're looking to serve, go to FoundryMinistries.com/serve. Micah Andrews and the Foundry, thank you for what you guys are doing. We've seen firsthand how God is using you, but I know that you would like nothing better if this was not necessary.
That's right.
But unfortunately, it is.
It is.
Yeah. So thank you for taking time to be with us today. If you want to find out more information, just use those websites that I just gave you, FoundryMinistries.com. Thank you, Micah. Bubba, well done. Thank you, buddy. And thanks to each and every one of you for being with us on today's edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast.